All right. Well, Evan, I think when you're ready to take us away with a mindfulness, that would be great.
Great, that sounds good. Nice to see everybody. So I'm going to review something that I practice myself and that I do with child and adolescent clients that I work with, but um, I think it can be a real benefit because it's something that you can kind of do throughout your day. So I call it the finger trick. And so I'm going to kind of guide you through how to do this. And usually it takes multiple steps with clients, but we'll do the best that we can today. So feel free to turn your camera off if you want to. I'll ask you to kind of rest your eyes in a natural gaze, be closing your eyes or sort of looking down. Take a deep breath, count how many seconds you're breathing in, and try to breathe out for one more second, 1 second longer. So breathe in for like 3 seconds, for example, breathe out for 4. And as you're continuing to breathe, draw your attention to your neck, notice any tension, and you can choose your right or your left hand, whichever you prefer. Bring your attention from your neck towards your shoulder, down through your arm, upper arm, down to the elbow, and keep breathing. Now bring your attention further down your forearm to your hand. Just notice if you have any urge to clench or wiggle your fingers or just hold your hand still, and pay attention to your thoughts and feelings. Continue to draw your attention further down your hand to your thumb and also to your index finger. And notice that as you're moving your thumb and your index finger, you may feel the tendons in your hands and the muscles. And so very slowly, bring your index finger and your thumb together, little by little. If you're doing it really fast, you might not be able to notice the tendons in your hands. And so try to slow it down until you can notice the little minute changes in your hand, muscles, and tendons. Keep bringing them together little by little until they're almost touching. And it can be helpful to tell yourself, I might not be able to control everything, but I can control this. Now, when your finger and your thumb are almost touching, try to rub them against each other very slowly. If you're pressing really tight, you won't notice the ridges on your fingers. But if they're barely touching, you might notice the ridges on your finger and thumb rubbing against each other. If you're able to, slowly rub your finger and your thumb where they're barely touching and count the ridges on your fingers. And once you get to a number you feel good about, 3, 5, or 10, take one more deep breath, wiggle your hands, and bring your attention back. So I did this really fast because we're on a schedule today. But when I'm practicing this myself and with kids, this is often like we're building up on this, towards the kind of counting the ridges on your fingers. And so if you weren't able to count today, that's okay. It takes some practice. The thing that I really like about this is I can do it when I'm in a meeting, when I'm walking around, and students can do it, kids can do it while they're in school or other places. And so it can be a little more accessible. So please bring your cameras back on when you're ready, and curious if there's any initial reactions. If we have time, now we can move forward. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Evan. I think I need to do that every time I go home to the two teenage boys after work.
Yeah, I do it multiple times a day, and it's just nice that it's right there, right at the tip of your fingers.
And that brings us to what we're talking about today, which is using an ABC model to establish home and classroom behavior plans. Okay, because we know that disruptive behaviors in the classrooms we lose instructional time, we get lower achievement for everyone, teachers get stressed and frustrated, and we also notice if we're not using like a systemic framework, that it could be inequitable and disproportional disciplinary referrals. And then for behavior plans at home, it can result in a lot of people being frustrated, increase in mental health concerns, and even hair loss, as you can see up here now for me. So we're going to get right down to some solutions. Lauren, Haack, and I will be covering this. Again, my name is Shelly Nakaishi. I'm a nurse practitioner at UCSF and Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland in psychiatry. And Lauren, do you want to introduce yourself, or do we need to do?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Haack, and I am a clinical psychologist in the department. And I've worked with the ABC model for, 15 years, if you can believe it. I know I look so much younger than that to be possible. But this is one of my, if not my favorite tools ever. So I'm really excited to talk to you all and brainstorm together.
Awesome. All right, next slide, Evan. So we have no financial disclosures. The UCSF CAP program is supported by federal and state funding. Next slide. These are our learning objectives, is to apply the 5 steps of the antecedent, behavior, consequence, ABC system to some specific cases, so we can get additional support, and then connect this ABC system to what the schools use, which is a school-wide positive behavioral intervention and support system called the PBIS model, and also have it included in a home setting. And then I actually identify some effective antecedents and consequences strategies for behavior plans. I know I am constantly doing this myself, and I can constantly need support on doing this. Next slide. All right, the good thing is that we've all been probably doing this. We've all been using the ABC framework. Teachers actually may be using a system called the Class Dojo. We, as parents or caregivers, use a framework of, when you get your homework done, then you can play on the video games. So this is all part of what ABCs are. And as we dive down and break it down some more, we'll make it, hopefully this make it more clear, and we'll get better strategies in utilizing this. Next slide.
Okay. So, Shelly so eloquently put, like, ABC plans can be as simple as a when-then plan, right? And these are things that we do ourselves too to function as, functional adults, right? Like, okay, well, when I go to work and get my paycheck, then I can take the vacation I want to take over spring break, right? But if we break it down even further, these are sometimes called functional behavior analysis or functional assessment-based interventions or before-after plans. And you might be thinking, well, this sounds really teacher-focused or really parent-focused, but really these can be done with anyone. So these could be done if you have like a parent or caregiver in your office. They could be done if you have a youth directly working with you. I've also used them before when I have trainees and like a session or a patient visit doesn't go very well. We use it to sort of pause and break down, well, what happened and what could we do better next time? And so the 6 steps of this is, first, you're really starting with, what is the behavior that is concerning? And when we're talking about behavior, we want to be really descriptive and judgmental. So I often talk about, it would be like if you were writing a screenplay, right? So instead of like, well, my child is being really Lazy. Well, what does that mean? And like lazy to you might be really different than lazy to me. But if you say my child is not finishing their homework, they're behind in all of their assignments, well, that's much more descriptive, right? We all kind of know what we're talking about. And then after we identify what's concerning, we want to flip that. Well, so then what do we want to see, right? And again, the more specific we can be, the better. So, well, instead of them not doing their assignments, I want them to every day start their assignments and turn them in, right? Really specific. After we've identified our behaviors, then we want to look at sort of the setting, like what's going on when these behaviors we don't want to see are happening, right? So will they get assignments every day in all of their classes, and they're supposed to write them down in an assignment notebook, but they really don't do it very consistently? Okay, so that's like the setting, the setup to what's happening. And then what are the consequences? Well, we usually get in a big argument about it. And then honestly, I just give up because I have to do my other things and he's so behind anyway. Right? So then we want to think about, well, these antecedents and consequences are likely reinforcing that this behavior keeps happening, right? Like our consequence of just giving up is actually rewarding them, right? Just like we learned about in the interaction cycles last month. So what could we change about the setting and about our response? When we talk about consequence, we're not talking about just something that's negative. We're talking about anything that follows the behavior. How could we make tweaks in that so that the behavior we want to see is more likely? Okay, well, first, I'm really going to make sure that they and I know what the assignments are every day. So I'm going to ask for support from the teachers to really help my child write down their assignments, so that we all know what they are. And then I'm going to set up a reward plan. I'm also going to set up a routine where every day at 4 p.m., everybody's screens are off and we're all doing quiet work. My child's expectation is to do their assignments with me scaffolding, sitting really close. And then as soon as they get done with that homework, they get a reward. They get to earn their free time, their video games, right? So that's an example in the home setting. I'm going to turn it over to Shelly to talk a little bit more about how this plays out at school.
I got this example from a friend who's a teacher, and this is a school example. So she kept having this, the classroom's getting disruptive every day around 3 o'clock. And so she actually looked at what is happening. And she notices that this certain student comes in and does this flicking thing on his mouth and starts to make this loud water-like sound. And then she asks him to stop. And then she calls him out in front of everyone. And then when she does that, then all the other students around start talking because they're either making fun of him or the teacher isn't paying attention anymore. And so then now all of a sudden the classroom is much more disruptive. So she took a look at the situation and tried to really analyze what is happening at that time of day. And then she broke it down and was outlining the scenario. Okay, next slide. And so she rethought it. She's like, I need to stop giving this guy attention because that's what's distracting me from, and he's liking this attention. And so when she actually changed it up and moved him to a different seating area, so she's closer to him, and actually ignored this loud noisy sound over time, then it actually, and she didn't pay attention to it, the classroom was less disruptive. So I know that's like a simple approach, but she really tried to take this like ABC approach of thinking, what is commonly happening at 3 o'clock? What am I doing? And how do I break it down to kind of change up the situation? Okay, and so the ABC framework can be used in a more systematic way. at the school system, they often, schools will use the school-wide positive behavioral intervention and support system, PBIS. And we also have a home system too that can be used, such as like at my son's school, they have the school values, which is be respectful, be safe, and be an ally. And so that's like the top level. And that at home, it would be the same thing, you know, like we want to be respectful, be responsible, and be kind. And then tier 2 levels are more about like, again, is more specific things. Like maybe we have a behavior chart for the family of trying to make sure all the homework is turned in. And that could be the same at the school and the classroom. There's if everyone turns in all their homework on time and we get a certain number of points, then at the end of the month, we have a pizza party. And the same thing at home. And it's much more positive base. The universal, the tier 1 level is supposed to be targeted for like 80% of the students. Then tier 2 is maybe for a specific classroom or for a specific behavior we want to encourage more at home. And then tier 3 are more targeted behaviors. And at school system, that might be more like through an IEP, and you have a behaviorist involved about how to specifically for an individual help them either behaviorally or academically improve. And then at home, we might have specific behavior plans for a specific target for each young person in the home. Like for me at my house, it's for one person to get their homework turned in and not be tardy. And the other person is to get their work, to respond kindly and complete the task the first time asked. And we're still working on that one. Okay. Now, the school-wide, the PBIS framework is actually, it's a whole approach for everybody within the school system to kind of use as their framework. Like for my son's school, they would get golden tickets when someone was being seen as being an ally. They would get a ticket, and then they can turn that in for a prize. And it was in all the school communication about the school values. Some schools really utilize this. Some do not utilize it as much. I think it works. You see it a lot more in the elementary and middle schools, but it's harder to implement for the high schools. One of the ideas behind PBIS is to actually reduce racial inequities in schools around school suspensions. And in 2012, there was actually a Senate bill that requires an evidence-based practice, which this is to be implemented if for certain schools to enhance like a creative, positive school climate and to reduce more racially driven school suspensions. How many are familiar, if they're working in the school-based health system, actually use a PBIS system? I guess if you can put in chat, have you found it helpful, not helpful, or I don't know about one? Okay, and then and we could talk about this more when we get into the case studies. So this is just another slide to really look at using an FBA to, again, figure out what is behind this behavior and what can we do to help make this behavior change using the ABC model. And how this will play out for, like, if you're a medical provider in an FQH in the school-based health clinic, there might be a consult for, like, I have this patient, they have autism, and they constantly run away at the home at a certain time. And so I consulted with the provider and be like, well, what is happening before they run away? And then what happens after they run away? What is occurring in the home? And so that was their first intervention, was to work with the family to kind of do the ABCs to kind of see what is this function of this behavior with the running away. And then, okay, each time I take a breath from parenting, or before I start parenting, or even if I, attend an IEP, I'm really trying to have a behaviorist approach and doing an FBA, and I'm constantly doing it for myself. Like, why is he constantly still late at school? and is taking the phone away from him when he gets home really working? It's not. So I need to find a different way of helping to motivate him to get to school on time, and change the actual consequence, and see if there's a better motivator to help them reduce this behavior. So it is very strategic thinking. And I think the best thing I do for myself is before I launch into actually coming up with a behavior plan, I don't do it when I'm mad. I try to do it with somebody else because there's always holes in the plan. And I also write it down and have it visually. This is in my home system, because this, the kids will always tell you, you did not say that, Shelly. So, okay, Lauren, I need more help on my getting to school on time plan. You're next.
Okay. So thank you, Shelly, so much for showing kind of how some examples of the ABC model can work in the school setting and the home setting. These are things you can do in your office with parents, with caregivers. If it's an older patient, you can even do it collaboratively, because one of the nice things about an ABC is it sort of destigmatizes and de-shames what's happening and really helps us identify, well, there's clear reasons like why this behavior keeps happening, right? And there are changes that we can all make to make the behavior that we all want to see more likely. A lot of the strategies that we talked about last week are great to plug into ABCs, right? So special time is one of my favorite antecedents, because oftentimes we find that if kids are getting positive attention all the time, they may be less likely to do sort of attention-seeking behaviors to get that attention. Praise and rewards was another big thing we talked about. Those are really great consequence strategies to plug in when you see the child doing the behavior that they're supposed to do, or even those steps in the right directions. Some other great skills to plug into the ABC, or to help your patient or your family in the office plug into their ABC, are really making sure that the expectations are reasonable and clear and achievable, right? So if my child is not doing any homework currently, is finishing all their homework every day a reasonable expectation? I don't know, like that's a pretty big jump. So maybe my expectation might start at sitting down every day at 4 o'clock at homework hour to start homework. I'm going to start there. It's really specific. It's really clear. And once they are reasonably meeting that, I might up it, right? As Shelly said, it's really helpful to create visual reminders of these challenges, like routine systems, charts, and making sure that these expectations occur at the same time in the same order and place every day, so that we don't have to think about it and argue about it every day, and then pairing with praise and rewards. So these slides have some video examples, as well as some handouts that you could, show really quickly to your patients in your visit. We're also going to provide you all with a handout. It'll be on the website accompanying today's video and slide deck that you could, print out and keep copies in your office to give to patients and families with some other good ABC skills. Really, the best way to come out of an ABC plan is a behavior support plan, because what that's going to do is address the antecedents by having a really clear set of expectations that then are going to target specific SMART goal behaviors, and then have a very clear and consistent reward that's ideally paired with praise. Right. And again, we want to aim for a 5-to-1 correction ratio of praise to correction, because this is how we know our brains learn a new skill. Right. And so when you do these behavior support plans, you can sort of start small and then monitor how it's going and make tweaks as you're going. And so we also have some links here to show some behavior support plan guidance. So the benefits of behavior support plans are they're really, when they're done well, they're resilience focused and trauma informed, right? Because when we have clear expectations, when we have structure, when we know what it is that we're supposed to be doing, it helps us feel safe and it gives us an opportunity to succeed. Right. And then when those people succeed, we're going to give a lot of reinforcement for those behaviors, which are going to grow over time. When we're talking to folks about behavior plans, these dialectics I think are always helpful to consider. So we want to have a balance of being consistent and yet also being understanding, right? We want to keep our routine as consistent as possible, but realize that some days things might be thrown out of whack, and that's okay. We really want to be confident in that we're, the adults driving these systems. We also want to be respectful, especially as the child gets older and develops more, including them as more of an equal partner in the conversation can be helpful. It is helpful if you can be both genuinely yourself and a role model and provide choices when possible, but limits when needed, right? So if we include the child in the plan, can they choose what rewards that they are going to get? That's going to be more helpful. But of course, we want to have those limits, right? Like if they're choosing 4 hours of video game time every night for their reward, like, I don't know if that's a limit I'm okay with. So how to do these ABC plans in your practice? You can do them like on a physical whiteboard. Sometimes I'll pull up like a Word document with a table and type it in together and then give them a printout of it or send them an email of it after. And we're going to do some practice now. I'm going to turn it over for some case-based learning and hopefully we'll be able to see how could you kind of guide a patient through an ABC within the single session consultation frame.